These circles in stone and dirt found around this planet going back at least 15,000 years in South Africa are residues of other intelligent life in the cosmos interacting with and terraforming Earth. These ancient South African stone circles can only be seen from the air. Their location is west of Maputo and north of Swaziland. Going forward in time from South Africa's stone circles to 12,000 years ago, we come to the mysterious circles of tall limestone pillars in Göbekli Tepe in southern Turkey. And then jumping to India, this is a 10,000-year-old rock painting of a hairless being with large black eyes, 4 fingers, and 4 toes. This extraordinary gray extraterrestrial-looking being was recently found in the Chorama, India region, 1,100 miles inland and northwest of Mumbai. Indian archaeologist J.R. Bhagat told the Times of India on July 15, 2014, quote, "These rock paintings are done in natural colors that have hardly faded despite the years. Findings suggest that humans in prehistoric times may have seen or imagined beings from other planets," close quote. The Times of India points out that in the village of Chandeli and Gotitola, where the cave rock paintings have been found and photographed, these are villages inhabited by people who tell about their ancestors, Rohila. The Rohila translates as the, quote, "small-sized ones," close quote. The villagers describe the Rohila as landing from the sky in a round-shaped flying object and have taken away 1 or 2 villagers who have never returned. This is the oldest abduction case that I have heard about. I was reminded by those 10,000-year-old yellow gold coverings and the large rounded heads of a large-headed, gray-skinned being encountered during a November 1980 abduction of a couple in Colorado. The husband artist said that the skin was actually the color of the gray drawing paper, not the flesh-colored pastel that he reached for under deep hypnosis and used to sketch the being. This one is a type with a pear-shaped head that government insiders have said that is an eben. When we talk about an eben, that's what they are, pear-shaped. They're still gray-skinned. These are the ones that make the menagerie of all the other grays that have the big black eyes of various characteristics and sizes. This particular being, this eben, has 4 long fingers, but they're not shaped like our hand. These 2 are very long, and these 2 are shorter. Now, in this rock painting that has just been released, this information, Professor Bhagat said, quote, "The fan-like antenna and 3 legs of the vehicle clearly show a similarity to UFO-type craft," close quote. Professor Bhagat is in the Chhattisgarh State Department of Archaeology and Culture, and he is asking NASA now to help research these rock paintings that have been carbon dated to 10,000 years ago. The Colorado abductee artist also sketched this craft with glowing orange light and windows on some sort of struts, and this was emanating a beam of orange light coming out of it, which reminds me again of what has been discovered in those caves in India. Well now, so we've been at 10,000, let's go to 9,000 years ago. These are only visible from the air, and they look so much like the South African that Michael was showing us yesterday, but these are in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, and Jordan. And these are from an Australian project in which they have been trying to look at these politically difficult lands for the last 3 or 4 years from satellite and using Google Earth. And what they are finding are hundreds and thousands of these, just exactly like South Africa. This is reinforcing the issue. Are we looking at self-activating software that is incomprehensible to human minds, and that these patterns that are perhaps all over the planet have been put there by extraterrestrials in order to accomplish something that may relate to energy, communication, or something that is beyond our understanding. Even the Bedouins, who know everything in Saudi Arabia and in Syria and Jordan, they didn't even know that most of this was here till the satellite studies, and they have no idea what they are or why. And they are not holders of animals, which was somebody told the New York Times. And when Michael said, well, a lot of these are only this high, that's not holding any animals. These are patterns in lava, as it turns out in these cases. And now, another place that Michael talked about yesterday, Napta. This is in the Nubian Saharan desert of Egypt, and this goes back 7,000 years ago. This was a standing stone circle that was erected, and researchers have discovered 6 megalithic standing stones at the center of a circle made of 24 more stones for a total of 30. And like the spokes of a wheel, alignments radiate outward in what is thought to be an astronomical calculator, reminiscent of the great stone circle of Stonehenge in England that emerged 2,000 years later after Napta. Stonehenge is estimated to be about 5,000 years old. I've heard presentations yesterday, John Anthony West and others. There's a suggestion this may be much, much older, but I'm going with the current academic. It's about 5,000 years old, described by some as a Neolithic stone computer. Astronomer Gerald Hawkins, author of Stonehenge Decoded, detailed analysis that showed that this stone computer could accurately compute many different cycles of solar and lunar eclipses for a period of 300 years before a simple adjustment was needed for another 300 years of detailed eclipse accuracy. Further, modern-day research demonstrates that Stonehenge resonates, quote, much like blowing over the top of a bottle to make it hoot, or like running a finger around the top of a crystal glass. This would work by making the air in the space vibrate at its fundamental resonant frequency. Measurements of the diameter of Stonehenge indicates that its fundamental resonant frequency is about 10 hertz. 10 hertz raises this question. Why so well matched to a frequency that is an alpha wave pattern in the human brain? Alpha waves are associated with relaxation, altered states of consciousness, and meditation. So why was Stonehenge constructed to resonate at 10 hertz, in addition to its work as a stone astronomical computer? From Stonehenge to South Africa to Göbekli Tepe to the Middle East, to Egypt and beyond. What if stone circles for centuries have been deliberately designed to resonate in specific frequencies as machines that operate by self-activating software turned on in certain fields? Who made the stone machines and that self-activating software? One hypothesis is that non-humans from somewhere else in the cosmos have been terraforming this planet for millennia. And now we know that there are about 200 billion stars in just our Milky Way galaxy alone. And there are billions of galaxies in this universe. Perhaps half of them have planets. NASA's Kepler mission has discovered dozens of planets that are in that Goldilocks zone of just not too hot, not too cold, not too dry, just right to sustain life. And for me, since 1979, I have been exposed in my work as a TV producer, writer, director, editor, and reporter to Earth mysteries and whistleblowers that indicate that other cosmic intelligences have interacted with Earth for eons and that they continue to interact today. One of those TV productions took me to Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico on April 9th, 1983. I was working on a home box office documentary entitled UFOs, the ET Factor. Then New York attorney Peter Gersten, who was working with Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, had organized a meeting for me at the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. There, a special agent named Richard Doty handed me an alleged briefing paper for the President of the United States of America on the subject of unidentified aerial craft known as UACs, and it included this sentence: extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. Was the first ET genetic manipulation all the way back to Homo erectus in Africa 1.9 million years ago, or in one of the later models leading up to Cro-Magnon Homo sapien sapien on the far right in this graphic? This is us. This is modern humanity. 30,000 to 40,000 years ago, this latest model of standing-up primate, Cro-Magnon Homo sapien sapien, had three big improvements over Neanderthalensis. The brain had changed for language, the Cro-Magnons could build boats, and they could make more sophisticated stone tools. So if the briefing paper that I was shown at Kirtland Air Force Base was correct, ETs made different models of Homo sapien from already evolving primates and kept tweaking different models up to modern humankind. The implication is that those DNA manipulating intelligences have been based on Earth for millennia, harvesting and manipulating genetic material from Earth life with non-terrestrial technologies that include anti-gravity, invisibility, and the projection of three-dimensional holograms as camouflage that the human retina and mind cannot tell as different from the world around us. The last big ice age on this planet hit its peak around 18,000 years ago, and the Earth began to warm up. And you can see on this map, here is where the ice was at the last maximum, 18,000. And you can see most of the United States was dry and cold, and over in here, here is Northern Europe and this area, but here is the Mediterranean. It was also free of ice. This is important. During that warming, something happened about 11,000 to 12,000 years ago to plunge Earth temperatures downward again very suddenly, and by nearly 30 degrees Fahrenheit below present-day temperatures. It's called the Younger Dryas. It was a cold snap. It lasted 1,500 years, and in North America, all over hundreds and hundreds of square miles, they have found this is what's called carbon mat, and inside of the carbon mat are nanodiamonds and iridium. Iridium is a material linked to impacts from outer space, and the hypothesis is that one or more comets and or meteors collided with this planet on the North American side and caused fires and dark skies around the entire Earth for at least 5 years. In that cold darkness, 33 large animal species went extinct in North America, including the woolly mammoths excavated from tundra, still preserved with buttercups in their mouths, freeze-dried. And that means that these big animals were quick frozen also in something that happened very, very rapidly. Saber-toothed tiger skeletons have been found with their spines twisted 180 degrees by some unimaginable force. At the same time that all this chaos was happening in North America, on the other side of the world is a place called Göbekli Tepe, 9 miles northeast of Sanliurfa, Turkey, near the Syrian northern border. Here is a satellite map that shows in a yellow pin, this is the marker at Göbekli Tepe in these remote hills northeast of Sanliurfa and the Urfa Museum, which is now vital to understanding what is happening in Göbekli Tepe. It is interesting that this region's water comes from the ancient Euphrates River, and that is the longest river in Western Asia. These circles of limestone pillars have been carbon dated to 12,000 years ago. that is more than twice the age of Mesopotamia. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, PhD, began excavating the first time about 20 years ago in 1994, and he was going layer by layer very carefully. Sadly, he died on Sunday, July 20th, last month, of a heart attack at age 61 while swimming in a pool back in Germany where he worked in the German Archaeology Institute. We are all so indebted to Dr. Schmidt for his great efforts to investigate what was inside Göbekli Tepe, a word that means potbelly hill. It was the hill's unnatural shape that first caught the attention of University of Chicago and Istanbul University in the 1960s, though scientists thought that it should be investigated then. Dr. Schmidt repeatedly measured carbon samples to at least 12,000 years old. No one is arguing with that. Adding to the mystery of the 12,000-year-old sophisticated construction is that Dr. Schmidt never found any evidence that people permanently resided there. So what was Göbekli Tepe's purpose? Ground-penetrating radar indicates there might be at least 250 more standing pillars formed in 18 circles, still buried under acres of deep soil. Dr. Schmidt has also discovered that all 30 acres of the pillars in circles were strangely reburied 1,000 years after this whole hill was covered. Over 30 acres, 19-foot pillars, 15 tons per pillar. Did the original Göbekli creators have foreknowledge about that coming impact from outer space? Did someone with advanced technology rapidly rebury all the pillars because Göbekli Tepe was a valuable alien machine? I wanted to see and feel Göbekli Tepe up close for myself. So I joined a tour led by Boston University geologist Robert Schoch. And on Wednesday, June 13th, 2012, as the sun rose, I was standing on the Göbekli Tepe hilltop in southern Turkey. Ramps have been built to walk around the circles of mysterious limestone pillars. The hilltop is about 1,000 feet above the valley floor. The limestone slabs were quarried, whoever quarried them, from bedrock pits located only about 350 feet from the hill. As the sun rose on the eastern horizon June 13th, I first faced the sun, and then I turned 180 degrees on purpose. I wanted to see, as the sun just hit, was anything lighting up down below. And it's difficult for me to see, but I think it's over in here someplace. It's marked C, Göbekli Tepe, section C. There's a pink arrow. And this is a large pillar that looks like it is cemented in modern cement to a rectangular base like an altar. And with the sun shining on my back, that pillar animal was facing me on an east-west axis. On that altar pillar is a long-bodied animal that does not quite match any known Earth animal today. And then another one of the pillars that was lighting up was in section D, which I think is down here. It's very difficult. I can't see. But the pillar there is set inside a groove on a rectangular base. And this is the pillar that has the two long arms coming around, clasping these fingers in the front. And it has this odd belt that perhaps, and an animal that is maybe a fox. Some people have argued about that. The arms end in 5 fingers outside that clasp the pillar. And below the hands, in this belt, these band of symbols have been analyzed by linguists, and they do not recognize this. This is still unidentified. They're symbols, but not known what they add up to. And keep in mind the 5 fingers on the outside of this column. I'm going to come to something else very interesting in a minute. Hanging from this odd belt with the strange symbols is what most people accept as being some kind of a fox, maybe loincloth. and it definitely ends with 5 toes. Along the base, in this very beautiful and dramatic photograph taken by Smithsonian Magazine, it shows 5 very strange bird-like creatures. And the June 2012 issue of Turkey's Actual Archaeology reported about the belt symbols and the animal skin, quote, "On the belt, a loincloth depicted in relief cut out of the stone is hanging down, covering the genital region. Due to the existence not only of arms and human hands, but also of belts and loincloths on the central pillars of enclosure D, it can be clearly stated that the T-shaped pillars have an anthropomorphic identity. But who are they? As their faces are never depicted, they seem very likely to be related to supernatural beings, beings gathered at Göbekli Tepe for certain but so far unknown purposes," close quote. And whoever those supernatural beings were, they left not a single trace or tool of how the 30 acres were covered with these pillars. As I was standing there wondering about extraterrestrial beings having constructed the Göbekli Tepe pillars in circles all over that hilltop, Yale University-trained geologist Robert Schoch, PhD, joined me. And as he was standing next to me, he said, quote, "You know, Linda, there is something about the shape of these limestone pillars that makes me think of tuning forks. I wonder if this whole place was made to vibrate, to resonate with some frequency provoked by a field from technology above," close quote. And what we were both thinking were aerial craft. Strange carvings on the Göbekli Tepe pillars include a wild boar, a bird with a sphere above a scorpion, a 3-dimensional cat-like figure with a long tail that is sculpted on this pillar. This is not glued on. This whole pillar was made in one sculpted piece. No hunter-gatherers with flint arrowheads made this. Stressing the fact that the creatures, symbols, and humanoids found in the Göbekli Tepe excavation came long before later cultures in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean, the layers of symbols on one of these Göbekli Tepe pillars is especially puzzling. The Göbekli Tepe bird here and the disc look very, very much like the later Egyptian goddess Nekhbet. This is only 2,000 years old, and Nekhbet was usually depicted with her wings spread, clutching a disc that had a tangent on this side, and that in Egyptian is known as a shen. This is a shen. It was a name derived from the Egyptian word to encircle. Now, perhaps the Göbekli Tepe bird-like figure holding a disc here is the source of the 2,000-year-old Nekhbet in Egypt. And what this meant to the Egyptians was a symbol for eternity, infinity, and protection, which is why it evolved as in cartouche to surround names of usually the royals, to protect them for all time through eternity. We were shocked to learn that one of the excavated Göbekli Tepe sculptures found among the pillars was stolen from the hill only 1 week before our group arrived. There was no money for security, no fences. You could climb up on top of that and go anywhere in Göbekli Tepe in June of 2012. There has been little or no security at this excavation site, but after publicity in 2010, the thieves did begin to arrive, and Dr. Schmidt realized that he had to get the most valuable pieces more safely stored away from the hill in the Urfa Museum about 6 miles away. So we went there, and inside the museum were clusters of these strange standing stone creatures. See the big tusk. I'm operating in darkness here. There's one that has a big tusk on the standing boar-like creatures. Now these surrounded this eerie, puzzling Göbekli stone totem. It stands 6 foot 4 inches tall, and what appears to be snakes on either side of the tall humanoid figure as you come in. And I took these photos. It's something I've always done. I take photos as I move, finding things for the first time, because often your eye and mind, those are the best photos to take. So this is the first photo that I'm taking from the side, and then I walked around in front. And you're standing directly in front of the totem. The snakes turn into the knees of a bizarre creature giving birth to what appears to be a human-looking baby. You have the side of the predator's head here that I think was completely, and nobody knows why, there was an erasure of this face. There were many humanoid figures that Dr. Schmidt has found that are definitely humanoid, and the faces have been completely obliterated. This comes down to another body here that comes down to knees. So there's 3 bodies, and this is the body with the pubic area that is giving birth to what looks like a human child. Okay, yes, sorry. Turkey's June 2012 issue of Actual Archaeology reports, quote, "One of the biggest surprises at Göbekli Tepe was a large 6 foot 4 inch sculpture reminiscent of the totem poles of North American natives, which was discovered in 2009 and excavated in 2010. The sculpture had been set into the northeastern wall of a rectangular room, and the totem was not visible originally due to the wall completely covering this. It was obscured even in the dig. The uppermost head depicts a predator," close quote, Actual Archaeology. But what kind of predator was on top of this totem that depicts human childbirth? Here is another strange head of a sophisticated 12,000-year-old statue called Urfa Man. He is hairless, and what must have been a huge nose is broken off the face. But it is those protruding black crystal obsidian eyes that grab you and you cannot turn away. And then you realize he never had a mouth. The chin was molded with a depression as if sealing the Urfa Man in silence or telepathic thoughts forever. And then your eyes drop down to the neck and the chest, where there is a double V neck on what appears to be a leotard uniform like the TV series Star Trek. But Urfa Man is 12,000 years old, being buried on this hill in Turkey. Why is it wearing a double V-neck and a leotard? And is that where Gene Roddenberry got the idea from extraterrestrial photos the government had? The Urfa Man's hands are holding his erect phallus with the testicles hanging down below the hands. And I can see, I think it's right in there. Are their thumbs behind the erect penis? Several people asked that, standing there. Are these then, if that were true, 6-fingered hands? And would the fingers clasping the pillar at Göbekli Tepe on the hill be 6-fingered hands? Strangely, legs are not depicted. Instead, there is only this stump that was pushed into the soil so that the Urfa Man would be standing silent with its black crystal eyes and no mouth among the tall pillars. Who was making Urfa Man and the bizarre stone totem 12,000 years ago? Who or what beyond humans has inspired construction of stone circles and pillars, pyramids and ziggurats for millennia? Who watches Earth? Who manipulates genes and evolving life forms? Who monitors the evolutions? And then who harvests the genetic material? Who or what leaves humans dumbfounded by displays of glowing lights and silent aerial craft in the skies? What if the builders of Göbekli Tepe, Atlantis, the Sphinx, Stonehenge, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, the Incas, and Mayans were all from non-human civilizations? What if those advanced intelligences have been interacting with Earth for millions of years the way we seed and harvest crops? That non-human terraforming and genetic harvest of Earth life continues today, and I first reported evidence of that 30-some years ago in May of 1980 when my TV documentary, A Strange Harvest, was first broadcast on the CBS station in Denver, Colorado. I was director of special projects there, and the subject was my investigation of animal mutilations in Colorado and North America. Ranchers, sheriffs, and deputies had told me, usually only off the record, that the mutilations were caused by, quote, creatures from outer space, close quote. One horse farmer saw a silver disc in his pasture when he had a series of colt mutilations on his Missouri farm in 1975. The disc in this pasture was left behind, it did leave behind a circle of dead grass and ceramic hard soil that remained for 2 years afterwards. I was at this farm. I saw this for myself. The horse farmer also saw this small glowing being in his truck headlights when he was driving home one night during the horse mutilations. Law enforcement told me that when fiery red-orange spheres of light showed up, animal mutilations followed. Some ranchers have even described seeing beams of light either raise an animal into a glowing craft or lower an animal to the ground, dead and mutilated. And why have you not seen that on the 6 o'clock news? Because there's two things. One, the government wants to make sure that no one takes this seriously, so they always front-load current media with stories about satanic cults and predators and disease. And the other is, having talked with many, many eyewitnesses, that humans are more afraid of other humans and ridicule, in this subject especially, than they are of ETs. And so the people who really, really could tell us, if they could be on Anderson Cooper's 360, they won't do it. The horse farmer and others that I've talked to say when you are looking at an oval that is so perfectly cut through the hide of an animal and there's no blood and there are no tracks around the animal, it says, one sheriff said to me, we started looking to the sky because how can you put a 2,000-pound bull down on complete dusty skin powder-like surface and not have any tracks, not even the animal's own tracks. So it had to have been laid down there. And what instrument made the bloodless, serrated edges here that are at Great Falls, Montana? This goes back to 1975. This is Portland, Oregon, 1990. This one, Oregon State University, a pathologist examined this and reported that this had been cut with high heat. But no carbon residue. We're carbon-based life forms. You cannot apply lasers to any carbon-based life form in any surgery without being able to see black carbon dots under a microscope. Nothing in this, but it had to have been exposed to heat because collagen and that area of the tissue had been cooked. And it began to dawn on me that the worldwide perpetrators of animal mutilations for at least a century could be unmanned drones, transporting self-activating machines that can surgically collect tissues without blood, like this perfect half udder. This was excised from a pregnant cow in Colorado Springs between noon and 5 p.m. on September 9th, 1982. The owners were outside the entire day, only 1/4 of a mile away from this pasture that had 30 pregnant cows. They never heard anything. They never saw anything unusual until they found one of their cows dead and mutilated.
Did they take the fetus?
No, necropsy. The concept of self-activating machines programmed by very advanced non-human intelligences to neutralize gravity, render invisibility, and project holograms came into sharper focus by May 2007. That's when a series of photographs of dragonfly-shaped, highly strange aerial craft began to emerge, beginning with this one taken on May 5th, 2007 in Lake Tahoe, California, by anonymous email to MUFON. And then the images were sent to Earth Files and the Coast to Coast AM websites. And the next day, on May 6, 2007, this series of photos were taken by a man who called himself Chad. He said his location was in the Bakersfield region east of San Luis Obispo. He got close enough, he could hear a tiny, strange electrostatic hum that drew him, and he just kept walking. I communicated with him about it, and he got below it and took the closest photo we have. And you will notice that on this tail are symbols. 10 days later, on May 16th, 2007, a man calling himself Rajman 1977 said that he was with his family having lunch in Capitola, northwest of San Luis Obispo, when he saw this in the sky, and he took a series of photographs. And even though it may be hard to see, on this tail, there are also symbols. And then I received more photographs by hard mail, 12 glossy print photos from a Ty Brannigan, who said that he took these prints from his bicycle on June 5th, 2007, the same day of two of the other photographs, in the Big Basin Redwood State Park near Saratoga. Ty sent these photos with a 2-page letter that included descriptions of twice seeing this aerial object suddenly appear rotating slowly clockwise and then counterclockwise randomly. And Ty got the 12 shots before the strange machine flickered out into invisibility. The bicyclers saw this craft flicker in and out 4 times. They never were able to get their cameras out fast enough on the first 3. It was the 4th time it stuck around long enough for him to get these photos. The Dragonfly drone photographs were attacked almost immediately by mostly anonymous sources on the web as CGI and Photoshop productions for an upcoming electronic game and/or movie that proved to be untrue and supports the perception that modern counterintelligence now uses that phony CGI Photoshop cover-up in this digital age as they used weather balloons and swamp gas 60 years ago. And in fact, Steve Winan, who he does for a living, he works in Photoshop, he asked me if I would send him all of the images that I've just showed you, and he went through all of them and others. And because it is his work, he sent me a 14-page analysis about the color fringing in these photographs that he said were evidence that these are photographs, this was not CGI. Color fringing occurs. See the purple back in here and see the front is green? This occurs because lenses have different refractive indexes for different wavelengths of light. And what's happening is that the lens is failing to focus all colors at the same convergence point. That happens when you're photographing real objects with real cameras in the real world. Steve Winans concluded, quote, here's color fringing on the Dragonfly drone. That is present in almost all of the images of the Dragonfly drones that people have submitted to earthfiles.com, including the 12 prints from Ty Brannigan in Big Basin, is a strong indication that these images were produced by a camera and not computer software. The simplest explanation is that these images are of an actual but unknown object in the sky, close quote. I and others were very intrigued by these boxes. You could see 2 here. And when you come in, this is as close and clear as I could get. Concentrate on the patterns of what you are looking at here. Here is the Chad photograph with these symbols on the tail. Here is a close-up of the tail. And here is what a truck driver in Pennsylvania, he flipped it around and sent me an email saying that he was studying on Earth Files these Chad photographs, and that when he turned it around 180 degrees just to see if he could make out these symbols more clearly, he decided that in the middle section of the segmented tail that he could make out plus X space YX7 plus. He Googled that and came up with this. And PDS stands for Planetary Data System, and you come down here, look at here, and you've got starbase jpl.nasa.gov. Right, that was my reaction. So I Googled it myself on my own computer that night. And when I Googled, I got further to Deep Space Program Science Experiment, spacecraft name Clementine 1, producer institution name Naval Research Laboratory. And then if you Google Deep Space Program Science Experiment, there is information about the Clementine 1 lunar mapping mission operated by the Naval Research Laboratory that launched on January 25th, 1994 from Vandenberg Air Force Base, California, as a joint ballistic missile defense organization and NASA lunar photographing effort. And for those of you who can remember when Reagan became president, Edward Teller was down in the trenches working on Star Wars. That's what made the public media, and that was for the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization. Clementine photographed the front, back, and poles of the moon, showing the smoother backside. But not many backside surface close-ups have showed up in public. In fact, I would like to know, has anybody in here since 1994 seen anywhere a series, a book, anything of the backside of our moon? Well, there are no Clementine photos of high quality out there, and I think that David Wilcox yesterday suggested that he has information. It's because they know that there were extraterrestrial technologies back there, but I think we now have structures on the backside of the moon, and they don't want anybody to know.